Welcome to the Food Junkies Podcast. Here, we aim to bring you the experience, strength, and hope of professionals working on the front lines in the field of food addiction. Our mission is to educate you, the listener, and increase overall awareness about food addiction as a recognized disorder. Here, we discuss all things recovery, exploring the many pathways people take towards abstinence in order to achieve a health-forward lifestyle. We hope to inspire you to thrive rather than just survive. So stay positive, make a change for yourself, and share your journey with others. And hopefully the message will spread.
Quit the carbs or quit the fat? What is the best advice for the food addict? Welcome to the Food Junkies Podcast. My name is Dr. Vera Tarman, and I am your host today, talking with Dr. Bart Kay. Bart Kay is a former professor of health sciences who has taught and researched in New Zealand, Australia, the UK, and the US in the fields of human physiology, human nutrition, and cardiovascular pathophysiology. Bart has published a number of peer-reviewed research articles and book chapters and has served as an external consultant for organizations such as the New Zealand All Blacks Rugby team, the National Rugby League, Referees Association, and for both the New Zealand and Australian Defence Force. After retiring from academia in 2018, Bart became known as the Nutrition Science Watchdog on YouTube, where he focuses on debunking nutritional myths and educating the public. One of his many interests is the Randle Cycle, a key metabolic pathway explaining how eating carbohydrates and fats together can lead directly to metabolic disease. This is what we at Food Junkies are especially interested in. We know we need to quit sugar, but do we additionally need to quit other carbs? And what about fats? Welcome, Bart. Thank you for speaking with us today.
My absolute pleasure. It's a privilege to be able to cross-pollinate and to share some views with folks that probably haven't heard of me before. So yeah, glad to be here.
Tell us how you got interested in your YouTube Nutritional Science Watchdog status.
I mean, I had a checkered career in academia over just over 2 decades, where I spent the entire time swimming against the current because I was not prepared to be told what I could and could not say to students. I was not prepared to be told I had to espouse the accepted narrative. And as such, I never was prepared to espouse the accepted narrative, because the accepted narrative is not only fallacious, means wrong, but also just ridiculous in the extreme and not scientific remotely. And as such, I was doing that. And finally, after 20 years of that, I figured better of it. And so I quit academia. It was kind of like a life crisis, if you like. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do next, actually. I've got no idea. And it was a friend of mine who I was just happened to be having coffee with who, why don't you start up a YouTube channel and turn that into your occupation, your way of earning money? And I was like, what? I had no idea you could even make money by having a YouTube channel. And it turns out I was right. You can't. It's not possible. But you get a very small pittance on advertising revenue. But yeah, I wasn't aware you could even do that. So my friend, who was a bit more tech-savvy than me, clued me up on it. He said, this is what you need to do. You set up a channel and you make videos and you post them up there. And once you've got a certain number of subscribers, you can monetize, which means they'll put ads on your videos and you get paid a small amount for that. I was like, okay, fine. So that's why I set up the channel in the first place. And I decided that it was quite a saturated marketplace already. So I needed kind of a hook or something that was different. So other than just espousing a different idea, I decided to do it as abrasively as possible. I have this caricature that I've played online pretty much since. It's the grumpy professor. It's the all cursing, all short words, just shock and awe. And that worked in terms of getting me an audience, getting me a sort of cult following, etc. But also now it's become that very same thing that got me some notoriety is also becoming a bit of a handbrake. So I'm changing my ways now midstream, about 6 or 7 years into it. And it's like, okay, we need to be a little bit more professional. We need to say naughty words less often, and we'll see how it goes. But at the end of the day, my mission is to tell people the truth as I see it, based on the science, and to combat the theology, the nonsense that is espoused out there.
Give me an example of some of the nonsense that you've been debunking.
Okay, saturated fat does not cause heart disease, not at all. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease, not at all. Taking statin drugs to reduce your cholesterol is not only not helpful. It is absolutely, utterly contraindicated. That is a dangerous metabolic poison that has no place in medicine. Red meat will not give you cancer.
That is a favorite one.
Yeah, those kind of things. The ideas that are being espoused out there. Oh, and the vegan diet is one of my big ones. No, the vegan diet is not a good idea. No, that's not a healthful diet. No, that won't lead you to a good place. Not at all. So that's what I've been about. But as I say, I've been doing that very abrasively, very confrontationally. And now it's like, okay, fine, let's do something a bit different. Let's go back to the collar and tie, the professorial sort of stuff a bit. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay. I came across you in the Lean Mass Hyper-Responder Facebook group, and you were speaking there about your views. You were talking about the Randle Cycle, which I've never heard of. And I've heard about the Krebs cycle. I don't know if it's entirely different. Can you describe to people who have not heard the Randle Cycle, who are not medical students, what it is and why it's important?
You bet. Okay, so the Randle cycle was first coined as the glycerol fatty acid cycle by the late Sir Philip Randle, whose name is now appended to the thing. The first thing to know about the Randle cycle is it's not a cycle. It's badly named. The Randle cycle is collectively a set of various bits of metabolic machinery, for want of a better term, and its role is in protecting delicate, important cells, such as muscle cells, for example, from the damage that those cells would suffer were glucose allowed to enter those cells according to its concentration gradient in the blood under the influence of insulin. At the end of the day, we think of insulin as the hormone that's responsibility is to traffic glucose from the blood into the cells. And that's one of the things that insulin does, absolutely. That's its role. It's its main role. It actually has a number of other roles too that people don't really know much about or study. But the assumption, therefore, is that if you have both glucose and insulin in your blood, but your blood glucose does not drop, i.e. the glucose does not enter the cells, that is a pathology. And that pathology is referred to universally and ubiquitously as insulin resistance. It's absolute nonsense. It's not a pathology. This is your body doing exactly what it ought on the basis of your gene set, which encodes for these various bits of machinery in your cells, which I'll explain in a minute. And those genes are the absolute peak of the evolutionary process to this point. Those genes really know what they're doing. This is not a mistake. This is not a pathology. And this is not something that we need to mess around with to fix, because it ain't broke. All right? What does the Randle cycle do? Okay. Basically, the Randle cycle collectively detects the level of energetic substrate in a given cell. And I think about muscle cells mostly because these are very energetically busy cells. They use a lot of energy. And other than neurons, muscle cells are pretty much the biggest drain, if you like, of energy in the body. So these cells need to know how much substrate is on hand. How much fuel is there here? And that fuel is in two main forms. So it's fatty acids and it's glucose. If there is a sufficiency of concentration of either of those and the cell is energetically replete, then the need for external energy to come into that cell is limited because we don't need that energy. We've got it inside the cell cytosol in storage here. If we then leave the doors wide open to insulin driving a bunch of glucose into that cell that's already full of energetic substrate, all we're doing is driving the glucose concentration up inside that cell, which is going to cause glycation damage and destroy that cell. So basically what the Randle cycle does in that circumstance when there's enough energy on board is it locks the door from the inside. So it doesn't matter how much knock on the cell membrane the insulin does, it will not allow glucose into the cell.
Which is what we call insulin resistance.
That's what's called insulin resistance, and that's what's referred to as a pathology. Yeah. And even the medical profession, the allopathic medical profession, and the academic body that underpins that, they all say that insulin resistance is the etiology, the root cause of type 2 diabetes.
Yes, I say that all the time.
Absolute nonsense.
Okay, correct me.
It's a symptom of it. The insulin resistance is detectable before the diabetes is detectable, and purely the reason for that is because diabetes is determined to be occurring at a given threshold value of fasting blood glucose. When you can detect something before something else doesn't mean that temporally it occurs before it, and it doesn't mean that's the cause of it. It's not. It's a symptom of diabetes.
Okay,
so that's the first thing to get right.
It's a marker, basically. It's a marker.
Yes. And it's the body actually doing what it ought, which is protecting those cells from glycation damage. So the sacrificial lambs become the red blood cells, the white blood cells, the platelets, and the vascular endothelial cells, which are all much more simple, and they can all be replaced much more rapidly using the CD34 plus adult stem cell system.
Okay, now we're getting over most people's heads.
Okay, so we can stop there with that.
Where does the mitochondria fit into this? Because we hear a lot about mitochondrial damage as well.
Yes, yep. So mitochondria obviously are thought of as the powerhouses of the cells. And sure, they are, because they're arrangement with the human body, really. It's an arrangement because actually mitochondria are ancient single-cell organisms that have formed a symbiotic relationship. And it's actually mitochondria that allow multicellular life to exist at all. So what they do is they extract oxygen from the environment, and they use that oxygen to react chemically with substrates such as free fatty acids, glucose, deaminated proteins, or alcohol. And they use that chemical energy to produce a substance called ATP, which is the chemical energy currency of the cells. So if your mitochondria are dysfunctional in any way, your ability to produce the energy that drives metabolic work is compromised. Ergo, your health will be compromised in some way, to some level.
So getting back to where you left off, so that the door shuts and we have this phenomenon called insulin resistance, which you're saying is entirely appropriate.
Yes, the insulin resistance is not a pathology. It does not need intervening because it's encoded for in the genes, and it happens for a reason. And the reason it happens is to protect the cell from glycation that it would suffer were the glucose allowed to pour in according to its concentration gradient under the influence of insulin.
And the Randle cycle helps to explain this phenomenon?
It does. Among other things, what the Randle cycle does, well, the kicker, if you like, or the thing that actually moderates this effect, is that there is a cyclic AMP kinase-related interaction whereby what happens is the GLUT4 transporter, which is the one that the insulin acts upon to get the glucose into the cell, what actually happens is that GLUT4 transporter will basically pinch off from the inside of the cell membrane, form a vesicle, enclosing itself entirely and sink into the cell cytosol, so that there's no way it can transport anything across because it's no longer a part of the membrane. And then when that situation resolves and the Randle cycle effect is alleviated, it flowers out again, rejoins the cell membrane and becomes continuous with it once more, and the transporter sitting in there can now work again.
Okay, so it's essentially the explanation for how a cell would downregulate or upregulate the insulin receptor.
Correct.
Now, you mentioned about that this is an evolutionary advantage. So how did this develop? How was this evolutionary?
Okay. Throughout our existence as a species, Homo sapiens, human beings, which is thought to be around about 350,000 years that we've walked the earth, during the vast majority of that time, basically ostensibly all of it, up to about the last 11 or 12,000 years, give or take, human beings have not had a great amount of carbohydrate available to them. We survived and thrived as a species, clearly, because we're still here, on the flesh and associated fat of animals, almost entirely. Human beings, this is not even a question. A lot of people disagree with this and say, no, that's not true, and this and that and the other thing. There is a chemical test that can be done on the collagen derived from the long bones of human skeletal remains. And this collagen protein remains viable for millennia. So they can get the collagen out of the long bones of skeletal remains of any age they like and test that collagen for its nitrogen-14, nitrogen-15 isotope balance. And that tells the researcher absolutely, unequivocally, without question, how much animal food versus how much plant food that human ate when it was alive. The oldest that they've tested so far is 110,000 years, and anything up to about 12,000 years ago when the agrarian revolution happened, the answer's the same every time within about 5%. And that is that 80% of the energy coming into human bodies throughout our entire existence on this planet was meat and fat, meat and animal fat. There was about 20% that was plant material, and that's believed to be rooty tubers. Nothing like the tubers we have now that we've selectively bred for that have lots of carbohydrate and all of that. We're talking gnarly, rooty, tubery things that had to be boiled and boiled and boiled and hours before you could even chew them up. And actually what humans got out of that nutritionally was largely a small amount of short-chain fatty acid. There was no carbohydrate to speak of. It was fibrous. So what I'm saying there is that there's at least 350,000 years, give or take, of evolutionary process. In other words, positive and negative selection pressures that predispose us to the consumption of meat and fat, but not very much carbohydrate. Now, when we could get carbohydrate, obviously, yeah, we did. You bet. Honey, seasonal berries and things. But again, berries not like the berries and fruits and things that we have now that we've selectively bred for. We're talking sour, fibrous, small. There wasn't much carb there either. And certainly we didn't sit down to a bowl of fruit salad or open up a can of, because none of that existed. And so the human body is absolutely geared to run, if you like, on largely animal fat. Protein is the source that we build our bodies from, and fat is the preferred and the absolutely species-appropriate, species-specific fuel source.
And essentially micronutrients of ketones, not glucose.
Correct.
So what was the purpose of having the human body being able to use ketones?
Because the neural tissue, the brain, is unable to run itself efficiently on fat. And as such, your brain needs glucose, and your brain can run on ketones if the glucose level is not sufficient. And I'm not saying that your brain will run on ketones 100%. It won't. If your blood glucose drops below a certain level, you will die. Luckily, the human body has a metabolic system called gluconeogenesis, whereby we are able to produce all the glucose that we need from non-glucose precursors. Mostly glycerol, the backbones of triacylglyceride molecules, fat molecules. Occasionally, one or two of the amino acids can go through that process. And the other thing that often goes through there is monocarboxylates, such as lactate.
Okay. So that people listening who are carnivore or keto-based don't have to worry, because you said that the brain doesn't thrive only on ketones. It requires some glucose.
That's right.
But we can make that glucose.
That's right. The fact that your brain needs glucose does not mean you need to eat any glucose ever.
Yeah, that's the point.
Exact dietary requirement for glucose intake in human beings is not 1 single gram ever. None. Your body is able to make all the glucose it needs itself. So
we got into trouble then because we started to introduce carbohydrates into our food supply.
Because this Randle cycle,
circle
back to that and to close that loop off, if you have a cell that's full of sugar, it will downregulate the sugar coming in.
Yes.
Makes sense. If you have a cell that's full of fat, it'll do the same thing. It'll shut down the sugar to some degree. That makes sense too.
Well, hold on. Let's make that more clear. So you have an excess amount of fat, so it will stop the gluconeogenesis?
We're talking about the extraction of the fuels from the blood to the cells, rather than the process of making the glucose, which is the gluconeogenic process, which is a different process.
Okay.
So the switch and change, the segue back to the Randle cycle to close that one off.
Yes.
What I'm saying is a lot of sugar in a cell will stop sugar coming in. Of course it does. A lot of fat in a cell will stop sugar coming in. Same reason. Of course it does, because of that protection thing. The thing that we need to understand about the Randle cycle, though, is this. If you mix sugar and fat in your diet, and you have sugar and fat in your bloodstream, that activates this Randle cycle thing far more rapidly, far more fully, and far more readily than either one of those two fuels by themselves.
Yeah.
So the worst possible thing you can do is have a mixed diet, a balanced diet of fats and carbohydrates. When you think about all the diets that animals out there eat, they're either diets that are rich in fat and protein, or they're diets that are rich in sugar or carbohydrates and protein, depending on whether we're talking about a carnivore or a herbivore. There are very few natural foods that are a mixture of carbohydrates, fats, and protein.
Okay.
That's interesting.
I'm sorry, I have to go back. I'm still confused about why fats cause insulin resistance, as it were. I get the sugar, but why the fats?
Okay, because what occurs is that when you are oxidizing fat at the mitochondrial level, the process of beta oxidation, which is the way that you oxidize fat, produces a lot of a cofactor, a transporter for reducing equivalents, hydrogen ions, which is called FADH2. FADH2, in turn, when it's running through the Krebs cycle, TCA cycle, or tricarboxylic acid cycle, if you like, what that does is it causes gumming up, if you like, of the TCA cycle. It throttles the thing a bit.
Okay. This is important because I remember a vegan researcher saying that fat gums up the insulin receptor pathways, and this is exactly what you're saying. So there is truth to that. There is truth to that.
There is truth to that, yes. However, what they're doing there is giving you half the story, half the information. Because the thing is, what I'm getting to with the Randle Cycle thing is the worst possible diet you can consume is one that contains a significant amount of carbohydrate and fat.
Yes.
You need to pick a diet that's rich in one of those and very poor in the other.
Okay.
Either of those situations will alleviate this Randle Cycle problem. However, one of those diets is replete and complete for a human being in terms of the nutrient in it, and one of those diets is absolutely destitute.
Flesh it out, as it were.
Okay, so the diet that's based on animal fat and animal protein contains every single nutrient that a human being requires, both macro and micro, in the right amounts. A diet that's based on plant material, there are 13 or 14 known deficiencies in that diet in terms of daily, weekly, monthly nutrient required by a human being. So it's obvious which diet we should go for.
Yeah.
It's the one that provides us with everything we need.
I think I remember reading that you say that either is good, but in the long term, the carnivore keto one is much better. Yeah,
so the reason we need to avoid this Randle Cycle thing is because necessarily out of having the Randle Cycle activated to a high level, what occurs is this throttling of the TCA cycle causes a slight reduction in the ATP concentration in the cells, slightly. What that means is that concomitantly, it means has to happen, the level of inorganic phosphate in that cell cytosol is increased. Inorganic phosphate is a known activator of the pro-inflammatory cytokines. So you need to avoid that, like the plague. If you don't want cancer, heart disease, dementia, all the big killers. So you don't want the Randle Cycle activated. So that means you have to eat a diet that's rich in fat and protein, or that's rich in carbohydrate and protein, not a mixture of all three. Then the decision is which one of those diets will provide me with all the nutrient I need ongoingly, the one of meat and fat, which will, or a diet based on plants, which absolutely will not supply all the nutrient you need. So the result of being a vegan, for example, is this. 84% of people who ever decide to be vegan quit that diet within 5 years, and 90% of those people who quit cite catastrophic health failure as their reason for quitting. It's no surprise. 12, 13, 14, depending on who you believe, different nutrients missing from the vegan diet that you cannot get from plants.
For example?
Well, vitamin B1 is the obvious one.
Okay.
Several of the amino acids and the profiles of the amino acids won't be sufficient because there's no way to eat enough plants to get those ones in. Yeah, I could go on all day. I've done videos on my channel about these if people want to go and look them up, but this is not even a question. These are known deficiencies in that diet.
This is a question that people often ask for the carnivore diet. What about vitamin C? Where are they going to get their vitamin C, their vitamin B1? These are all important as well.
Right. So on a carnivore diet, your need for vitamin C is in the nanograms per deciliter level in your blood plasma. Nanograms. Why is that? I shall tell you. The main transporter for vitamin C from the blood to the interior of the cells is GLUT4. GLUT4 is the one that transports glucose. If it's not gummed up with having to transport a bunch of glucose, and the glucose isn't out competing the vitamin C, you don't need a lot of vitamin C. You need a very small amount, nanograms. Luckily, when you analyze meat, muscle meat, even well-cooked, well-done muscle meat, there is a sufficiency of vitamin C there, provided you don't eat carbohydrates in any significant amount. The other thing that you can say is, look, anecdotally, point me to a single case of definitely medically established scurvy in a person eating a carnivore diet. Shall we wait?
Yeah,
We'll be
right.
waiting all day. There's been one report of it, and it's not even a bona fide report. This is just some Vox Pop report. And it was a singer who apparently tried a diet consisting of only chicken, which is not actually good. You want red meat, ideally, and mayonnaise. And he did that for several weeks and got bleeding gums. It was probably gingivitis. And he went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh, you've probably got scurvy." Nonsense.
Okay. So,
James Blunt is who that was. I was trying to think of his name. It was James Blunt. Anyway.
so you said that basically carbohydrates and fats are the bad combination to do.
Yes.
But if you do carbohydrates alone and protein and fats alone, that's okay, at least in the short term. That's okay.
That's okay in terms of the Randle Cycle issue.
Yes.
And in the short term. Eating a diet rich in carbohydrates is absolutely not okay. It's contraindicated for a number of other reasons.
Okay. Can you eat too much fat, given that fat can potentially gum up the insulin receptors?
Well, look, at the end of the day, it's the dose that makes the poison on anything toxic.
Okay.
You can drink too much water and that will kill you.
That's
you can
true.
have too much oxygen and that will kill you too. Pretty quickly, actually. It'll do you real damage if you have like hyperbaric oxygen for too long. That's a real problem. In terms of the practicalities of can you eat too much fat, I challenge you. Have a go. You have really powerful satiety signaling in your brain that will tell you to stop eating fat. It doesn't exist for carbohydrates so much. There's no limit to the amount of carbohydrates a person could happily pour down their neck. And that's because we could not get them. And we are programmed to get as much of that as we can when we can because we couldn't get it.
Okay.
Now it's available to us 24/7, 365. There's no satiety signaling on that. But fat will shut you down when you've got enough on board really strongly.
Right.
And if you do go beyond that and continue eating fat above that, rather than that causing you to be inflamed, put extra weight on and store that extra energy, you'll actually just get loose stool and it will just flush straight through you, pretty much. The root cause of obesity is absolutely two things, actually. One, it's the intake of contraindicated and unnecessary carbohydrate, which causes the Randle cycle issue, which causes the inflammation, and inflammation causes weight gain. And secondly, it's the intake of any amount whatsoever of seed oils.
Okay, why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Seed oils directly upregulate both the LOX and COX inflammatory pathways strongly. On top of that, seed oils are either mono or polyunsaturated, which leaves them vulnerable to oxidative and glycative derangement. And that causes all sorts of problems, immune cascade, all sorts of stuff, inflammation, cancer, heart disease, dementia. The second worst thing that human beings ever did was add carbohydrates and plant material to our diet, the agrarian revolution. The worst thing we ever did was put seed oils in, by far, much worse than carbohydrates.
And seed oils, for the most part, come from carbohydrates anyway, don't they?
Well, they come from plants.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the issue with them mostly is the fact that they are pro-inflammatory directly, and then by becoming deranged by oxidation or glycation or both, they become an immune cascade problem. So, just vile stuff. Seed oils originally, they started manufacturing seed oils to lubricate engines.
Yes.
It's not food for a human being, not at all. And then they put the Heart Health Foundation tick on the things because follow the money. And saturated fat is bad, they said, the very thing that we've evolved on for 350,000 years and probably 4.5 million years before that in immediately pre-human but not quite yet human speciations. Incredible.
Proteins. Can you eat too many proteins? Can you eat?
Yes, you can.
Okay, can you elaborate on that?
Yes, again, no. Strong satiety signaling on protein as well as fat because it's the thing we're designed to eat. It's very, very difficult to eat too much protein. If you do, however, the problem can be that some of the amino acids are gluconeogenic, and you can start causing yourself a blood glucose issue born of consuming too much protein.
Which is amazing to think about that.
Yeah.
Can you give me a sense of how much is too much, or is that entirely up to the individual?
It is a bit individual, and it's how long's a piece of string, and it's not just a person's individual gene set, but also the environment in which those genes are placed at any given time that affects that. That said, as a rule of thumb, and I'm loath to use that term because I know it's derivation and it's not great. So as a rule, shall we say, 2 grams of protein per kilogram of lean body mass per day
Okay.
is about right, plus or minus 10%, give or take, on the first standard deviation for most people. However, that said, you will not see any pictures of ancient people drawn on the walls of caves anywhere where they've got their calculator out.
Right.
We have hunger and satiety signaling in the same way that we have thirst and slaking of the thirst. Our brain doesn't have a language. It can't speak to us in words. It has to give us a sense of thirsty, drink, hungry, eat, full, stop.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That you can only drink so much. Similar.
Now, also, before we move off that, just to make it really clear on this, the other thing that's out there that the medical profession and academia underpinning it don't get their heads around is that a person on a carnivore diet will almost certainly have an A1C value up above 5.5, to which these vegans mostly will say, look, there's evidence it's bad for you.
Yeah.
You've got diabetes because you're eating all that fat.
Okay. Absolutely what they say. Absolutely.
That's what they say, absolutely, word for word. Here's the argument. Number one, the A1C test makes a number of assumptions. First and foremost, it assumes that the lifespan of a red blood cell is X number of days, plus or minus a standard deviation. That assumption is false in carnivores. There is clear evidence based on the breakdown products of red blood cells that humans that eat a carnivore diet, their red blood cells live significantly longer. Ergo, their A1C value is artificially pushed up by the fact that those cells live longer, and that shows up on the A1C test as being, oh, look, but that test is always interpreted under the assumption that the red blood cell lifespan is the same as everybody else's, which is false. Secondly, an A1C value of, in some countries, they say 5.6 is the cutoff for diabetes. In some places, it's 5.8 and whatever, somewhere around there. Number one, nothing magical happens at that level. That's just a threshold that's imposed by the allopathic community to say that's where we're going to make the diagnosis, and below that, we're not.
Yes.
Ridiculous, but that's what they do. If you are a person who eats a standard diet and your blood glucose is doing this, the average will run through the middle of that, absolutely. And 5.6, 5.8 is where diabetes is, but that doesn't mean 5.6 to 5.8 on the A1C is the damaging problem. It's the peaks of glucose up here, not with because also there's a whole bunch down there because these people's blood glucose does that.
Yeah, it goes up to 6.
Up here is where the damage is, the high glucose levels. A carnivore person's blood glucose is rock stable. It doesn't do that. It's just a straight line through the middle. There is no evidence whatsoever that an A1C, even up to as high as about 6.2, is actually problematic in a carnivore eating person. So basically what I'm saying is, this is what I'm up against with these theologues, these people who are predisposed to believe what they've been told by the high priests of the Church of Anorexia Vegana. And they are mindlessly regurgitating and espousing these ideas, which are partial information, disinformation, half information, based entirely on, usually the ignorance of the people that are making these arguments, even those with doctoral qualifications. But even more than that, it relies upon the ignorance of the audience, the layperson who doesn't understand how these people, number one, are badly misguided. I don't think they're bad people, most of them. I think they're just really badly misguided. Some of them actually are evil, nasty bits of work. I'm not saying they aren't. I could name you names, but I won't. Most of them are doing their best. Most of them think, and most of them genuinely believe they're doing the right thing by their patients and the right thing by the general public in saying these things.
But they're making claims like, hey, my patient no longer has diabetes. They're off of their medication. They've lost weight. Like, they're making pretty good claims.
So what they've done by putting a person on a plant-based diet is they've alleviated this Randle Cycle issue.
Yes.
Which has short-term normalized their blood glucose response normalized.
That's the key. It's
However,
a short-term solution.
84% failure rate within 5 years, and 90% of those people say catastrophic health failure. Have you ever seen a vegan who's been a vegan for a decade or more who doesn't look absolutely kachitek? Walking skeletons because they are destitute of nutrition. Either that or they're eating a junk food vegan diet and they're obese.
Which is the thing that I see all the time is it's not just about, being. One of the things that you mentioned earlier on, and I'd like to talk about, is the genetics and the ethnic variability. Because we were talking about the evolutionary advantage to this. So do you see some ethnic variations where some populations really should be carnivore for sure, and others have actually managed to adapt to a agricultural diet?
Yep. Okay, look, the appropriate species-specific diet for a human being is 100% carnivore, no plant material of any kind to speak of, irrespective of where you come from on the planet. That's a fact.
Okay.
That said, yes, there are certain populations who have adapted better to that, and it would seem that there is some effect on a person's tolerance, is the word I'd use, to a diet that's not ideal, based on the latitude on the planet where their genes come from most recently for the last few thousand years or so, it seems. So the closer you live to the equator, it seems like the more of that you can get away with. And that's very much a generalization. It's not a hard rule in any way, shape, or form. Everyone's slightly different in their individual makeup. But yes, there are groups of people who don't suffer as much, as immediately, as readily than others.
Because they've adapted over time.
Yeah.
Being able to
some degree. Yeah. Genetic drift is glacial. People need to understand that the change in the genetic makeup of any animal is, while there are fits and starts, it's not a steady thing. No change, bang, big change, usually due to a major event that wipes out most of the species, is where you get these huge jumps. But yeah, human beings, we've had one or two events that wiped out nearly all of us. And we've come through those, and they've been where the big jumps in genes have been. But none of those things have happened since the agrarian revolution. It was only 11 or 12,000 years ago, depending where on the planet you're looking at and all of that. And in terms of genetics, that's just the absolute blink of an eye. Yeah. If you were to think about even if you said, okay, it was 350,000 years, don't quote me on these numbers, but I think it's something like this. If you turn that 350,000 years into a 24-hour period, we added plants to our diet at about 5 minutes to midnight, having lived 11 hours and 55 minutes, 23 hours and 55 minutes as carnivores.
So if a person did want to eat plant-based, I know that the scientists advocate for this, they also advocate for low fat. So if you are going to follow that, then at least do that. Do a very low fat.
I would say absolutely do not even attempt to undertake a vegan diet under any circumstances.
Right.
That's my line in the sand. I will not suggest to anybody that there's any reason why they should do that. It's a bad idea. It's contraindicated.
But if the ethical reason,
if you are determined, then yes, don't mix fat and carbohydrate.
Okay, so then short term.
Be prepared that within 5 years, it's 84% likely that you will have a failure and have to quit that diet, and there may well be extensive and irreparable damage to your health in that period of time. Do not do it.
Okay.
It's my advice.
So now getting back to the carnivore, one of the questions that people were saying, okay, I'm a carnivore, but my cholesterol has gone up so high, so I'm going to start adding a little bit of vegetables in to get that cholesterol back down. Do you want to comment on that?
Sure, you bet.
Can a person bring back some carbohydrates safely?
They should not do that.
Okay.
The level of cholesterol in your body,
which will go up
on a carnivore diet, absolutely it will. That level is determined by your genes. Your genes know what they're doing. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease, period. It does not. That is a falsehood. It's always been a falsehood. There is no evidence extant anywhere in the scientific literature that can support that claim in any way. The best that they've got is an inference based on epidemiology, which is so vastly compromised and deluded that it's laughable. There are no scientific studies that suggest in any way, shape, or form that there's even any mechanism by which cholesterol could possibly cause heart disease. It does not, in fact. So you do not need to worry about your cholesterol level, not now, not next week, and not ever. Leave it to your genes. They know what they're doing. No, you do not want to put some carbohydrates and plant material back into your diet. No.
So you would say that's just inviting illness again?
Yes, exactly.
All right. And not even doing a switch up, like introducing it once in a while, because
Yeah.
they're freaking out at their cholesterol, which is doubling, tripling from what it was.
Which it will do, and that's absolutely indicated, in fact.
It's actually
The whole idea that the medical profession have put in play that your cholesterol level ought to be a certain level or below, there's one thing and one thing only that underpins that, and it's not science, and it's not a need to look after people's health. It's the desire to prescribe a drug that's not only unnecessary, a drug that is vastly, hugely damaging, demonstrably.
Do you want to say a couple of things?
Look, at the end of the day, you can look at populations, and again, I'm not a fan of epidemiology, and it's not a cause and effect inference.
Okay.
But when you get an association between A and B that's remarkable, it's probably worth paying some attention to it. For example, the increased incidence of lung cancer in a smoking population is something like 11,500% per pack year of smoking. Does that mean smoking causes lung cancer? Most people will just go, of course smoking causes lung cancer. Of course it does. However, in a scientific sense, that is not proof. It's an association. It's a very powerful one.
Yeah.
11,500% more lung cancer in a smoking population. Okay, we need to take that seriously.
Yeah.
The incidence of increased cancer, by the way, on meat eating, for example, just as a comparator, they're reporting things like 10, 15, 20%. Now, 10, 15, 20% is not the same number as 11,500, is it?
No.
Not remotely. Okay. Most people have probably heard of a universally fatal neurodegenerative disease called ALS.
Yes.
It's the one that killed our friend, the physicist.
Stephen Hawking,
yeah. If you are in a population that takes statins,
oh my gosh,
the increased incidence of ALS in a statin population is 11,800% above baseline non-statin taking population. That's enough.
That sounds like the cancer smoking.
That's enough for me for going, I'm not taking a statin under any circumstances, especially considering the reason for the statin is to reduce cholesterol, and cholesterol is not a problem. It does not cause any disease process of any kind. So why the hell would I do that? Other than because my doctor told me that cholesterol causes heart disease and I better take this drug, otherwise I'm going to die, which is criminal, by the way, for a doctor to do that. But they do because they're mandated to do so.
Yeah.
That aside, okay, ALS, that's terrible. Right. 50% by weight and by volume of every cell membrane in every one of the several trillion, with a T, cells in your body is cholesterol. 65% of the dry weight of your brain is cholesterol. The myelination on your neurons is cholesterol. That's why the ALS thing, by the way.
And maybe MS as well.
Probably, yeah. In the same tree, the same metabolic tree as the production of cholesterol, which starts at the metabolite pathway, in that tree also you will find ubiquinol, otherwise known as coenzyme Q10. You take a statin that knocks down coenzyme Q10 ability for you to produce that in your body. Coenzyme Q10 is one of the respiratory chain pigments in your mitochondria. You knock that down, the result is rhabdomyolysis, the death of muscle cells, including heart cells, the very cells that this drug is supposed to be protecting. It puts them at risk of destruction.
Okay.
There's also a large, not as large as 11,500%, but still quite a large association with incident diabetes on statins.
That's incredible. Yeah.
And all to knock down cholesterol, which does not cause a problem in the first place. Still.
Yeah. Since we're on the topic of medication, what's your opinion about the GLP-1s? What are they doing? They're making satiety changes, insulin resistance.
Right. Okay. So when you understand the Randle Cycle,
yes,
you understand that it works for a reason. And a lot of these drugs, among other things, will counteract that and force glucose into cells, lowering the blood glucose.
Yeah.
Because the medical profession thinks that the elevated blood glucose is the pathology, when it's not. It's the result of the Randle Cycle doing what it's supposed to do. And we need to get that blood sugar down. And so how do we do that? By ramming the sugar into the cells, the very place that the body's decided that it doesn't want it.
Yeah.
So for that reason alone, I wouldn't touch a GLP-1, irrespective of what it does to your hunger and satiety signaling and all of that kind of stuff. I also would caution around long-term safety and the lack of data around that for GLP-1. Because they haven't been around long enough.
Yeah. Your argument, that would be the same as don't use metformin either. Anything that facilitates.
I wouldn't touch metformin with a barge pole. No, absolutely not.
It sounds to me like you're going to say the best solution is to not eat the sugar in the first place.
You're onto it. You've got it.
We've got it.
You've got it.
Yeah. Do you have any comments about, this is a podcast geared towards people struggling with sugar addiction. They know they should stop, but they struggle with. Do you have any comments about that in the context of what we've been talking about? Randle Cycle?
Yes, I can give you all the facts. I can give you all the biochemical reasons and all of that stuff that's absolutely unassailable to tell you that absolutely when someone says to you that the thing to avoid is carbohydrates, they are absolutely right. That won't help you with your addiction.
No, because we want them, despite the fact that they're so unhealthy.
You're hardwired to want them. That's why. Yeah. So there are two types of people in the world I have found in terms of everything. There are moderators and there are people who have to abstain.
Yes.
I'm an abstainer because I cannot moderate.
That's who we're.
So I have to abstain.
We're abstainers as well.
So people in low carb communities, that's the reason. Because if we could all moderate, then we wouldn't need any help or support from anybody. We would just moderate and we would stay under what is likely to be a damaging level of carbohydrate intake. And to throw a number at that, 50 carbs a day, 50 grams of carbs a day or less is unlikely to cause a problem.
Okay. That's what you would
above that, it starts getting dodgy. Once you get much above 100 grams, there's almost certainly going to be a problem at some point.
But 50
and there are people, even in the carnivore community, there are people who are suggesting hundreds and hundreds of grams of carbohydrates a day in the form of fruit and whatever else. There's one particular character who is an allopathic physician who is also qualified as a psychiatrist. He's never practiced in either field, by the way, at all. He went straight to being a social media influencer out of medical school. And he's running around, eat fruit, eat sugar, it's great. Irresponsible.
Yeah.
Ridiculous from that individual. He should stop that.
Yeah.
And I've told him repeatedly. But there you go.
But you're saying 50 grams or is a top is still okay in terms of the Randle Cycle.
Okay. The exact verbiage I used was important. I said 50 grams and under is unlikely to cause you a problem.
Right on. Got it.
Under no circumstances did I say it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay is not a term I use in terms of any of those things.
So you would like to go for probably 30 or under or 20 or under.
Yeah. And ideally, the exact amount of carbohydrate a person should intake for most people is none at all. Right. None.
Okay.
There are some people who are so metabolically damaged by a life of carbohydrate intake hitherto that they really struggle with things like thyroid function, headaches, energy, etc. when they just go hardcore carnivore overnight. Which, by the way, don't do that. Change your diet from anything to anything else if you're going to change it slowly over weeks. Don't hammer over one night. I'm going carnivore tomorrow. Don't do that. That will mess up your microbiome. That will cause inflammation. That will cause your health to fall to bits.
That's very interesting. So over a period of maybe 6 months, something like that?
I usually say 4 to 6 weeks to change your diet across is a fair ramp. And that will prevent most of those issues.
Okay.
The real problem that people have is that they hammer over, they change they're eating a standard diet or whatever, and they go, I'm going to try this carnivore thing now because I've heard that bald bloke from New Zealand talk about it. It sounds great. I'm going to do that. And they just do it overnight. No, don't do that.
And then they say it doesn't work because it makes them feel awful. But
exactly. And then it's the diet's fault. No, you did it wrong.
Yeah.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
That's what the vegans say, isn't it? No, you did it wrong. You never really were a vegan. Anyway. So, change your diet slowly. Some people get away with it. Some people do hammer over and they go, I felt great immediately and I've not had any problems. Good for you. Most people will have a problem if they do that.
Is there anything else that you wanted to say about your mission or message about?
My mission has been to get accurate, unassailable, unchallengeably correct scientific information about the human diet and human nutrition requirements and other aspects of health to the general public. Hitherto, I've done that in a way that's been abrasive, sweary, offensive, on purpose. On the F-bomb, I've used that one a lot. A lot of people find that a problem. They don't want to watch me. They go, it doesn't matter how correct you are. I can't do that. I get that. My plan moving forward now is to clean that up because that was a hook to get people engaged in the first place. Now I want to grow to a much broader audience.
Yes. Those
of you who are on board with what I'm doing and can see that I actually do know what I'm talking about a bit and want to know more, come and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's at BART-KAY.
Perfect.
I've got 5 other channels that are all listed actually underneath every video, one of which is an all collar and tie, no swearing all along, never has been channel. Nobody watches it. They want to see who I'm going to swear at today, or what way I'm going to creatively be, abusive to somebody. And I then have to educate them by subterfuge before they realize I've done it. But yeah, you can help. And you can help by subbing to my channel, which, as I say, moving forward will be a lot less abrasive. And you can sub to all my other channels if you like. You can follow me on Instagram if you like, where I've got a channel called Bart_Kay, K-A-Y, _nutrition, where actually I've been using that lately.
Oh.
The way that people can help is to sub to it and comment under my videos. And if you feel like it's the sort of stuff that you can share,
yeah,
absolutely, share links out to my videos to others. It's all about just that word of mouth thing, because the YouTube algorithm does not help anybody that does not espouse accepted narrative. They actively handbrake us.
Yes.
So yeah, that's how you can help.
Yeah.
I'm involved in the marketing of a nutraceutical supplement which works by encouraging your bone marrow to release your adult stem cells, the kind I was talking about earlier, the CD34 plus ones. Thus, you have this resource of stem cells in your body which float around and find tissues in your body that are diseased, worn down, dysfunctional in some way, and replaces them with brand new ones. And when I say brand new ones, that means they have full-length telomeres.
Oh, wow. Oh, my gosh.
So go and check that out, folks. If you want to know more about that, stem cells and stem cell nutrition and stuff, that's my other gig, other than being a YouTube. I run the YouTube channel, I market the stem cell supplements, and I run one-on-one consultancies with folks who want second opinions, third opinions. They want my opinion on it. I don't give advice, I give opinions. Okay. You know what I mean? So that's that. Yeah. So you can do any of those things. Go and have a look at my YouTube channel, and the link outs to all of that stuff is available there.
Okay. So we do have a signature question, last question to ask you.
Cool.
And that is, if you could tell a younger version of yourself something about the Randle Cycle or your choice of diet or your passion, what would it be?
I would actually tell myself not to go into academia and spend 2 decades swimming against the current in there. I would tell myself to start the other business that I've got running 2 decades before I did, which would have been impossible because it wasn't available to me then. But I do want to thank you very much for your time today, Vera. It's an absolute privilege and a pleasure, as I say, to cross-pollinate and to get out about and amongst it. And I wish the very best for you and your channel, and I hope that your people can see some value in what I'm doing too.
Yes, I thank you very much for giving us your time.
Pleasure.
Thanks for joining us this week on Food Junkies Recovery from Food Addiction. Make sure to join our Facebook group, Sugar Free for Life Support Group, I'm Sweet Enough. Molly and Clarissa are food addiction professionals who offer one-to-one counseling and group coaching through Sweet Sobriety. Please subscribe to our show so you never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in today's episode, we'd appreciate you leaving us a review on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps grow our show and allows us to reach others who need to hear this message of recovery. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Dr. Tarman's book, Food Junkies. And as Vera always says, the power is ours.